Michael, Emily, Samantha and Daniel, 4 lives intertwined by love, lies and betrayal. What began as a picture-perfect marriage quickly spiraled into a dangerous web of secrets, obsession, and deception that no one could have predicted. Behind smiles and promises of forever, every choice they made brought them closer to a truth that would shatter their world. Please subscribe for daily new update of crime story and watch till end. Michael Anderson was the kind of man people envied without even knowing him well. At 35, he had everything most could dream of: a stable career in finance, a modern home in the quiet suburbs of Chicago, and a wife, Emily, who adored him. Their relationship seemed perfect, a story friends often recounted with admiration. Michael was attentive in ways that made Emily feel cherished. He remembered the smallest details about her day, planned spontaneous weekend getaways, and always found a way to make her laugh after a stressful day. To anyone who saw them together, it was clear that they were meant to be, a couple bound by love and trust, promising each other a lifetime of happiness. Yet behind Michael's calm and confident smile, there were subtle signs that something wasn't right. Emily didn't notice at first. She was busy with her own work, and believed their life was genuinely as idyllic as it seemed. But occasionally, she felt a twinge of unease. Michael's late nights at the office were becoming more frequent, and sometimes he seemed distracted, staring at his phone or computer with a focus that felt almost secretive. When she asked about it, he smiled and brushed it off, claiming deadlines and meetings. Emily wanted to trust him, to believe the life they were building together was real, but a small part of her began to sense that not everything was as it seemed. Michael had always been meticulous about appearances. He had learned early in life that charm and control could open doors and keep suspicions at bay. Every smile, every affectionate gesture, every promise of forever, was calculated to reinforce the image of a devoted husband. Yet, while Emily believed in the man she married, Michael had been living a life no one could have imagined. Behind the closed doors of their home and the polished surface of his social life, he carried secrets that would one day shatter the world they had built together. Friends often joked that Michael was too perfect, too considerate, almost unreal in his devotion. And perhaps in a way they were right. Perfection, after all, is often the mask for something more complex. Emily, trusting and loving, could not see what lay beneath the surface. A man who could compartmentalize his life with precision, hiding desires and actions that contradicted every promise he had made. He was a man who had mastered the art of appearances, making it impossible for anyone to suspect the truth until it was too late. As weeks turned into months, Emily's small doubts began to grow into questions she couldn't answer. She started noticing things she had once dismissed: a strange expense here, a call at odd hours there, fleeting glances at a phone he kept tightly in his pocket. Yet, each time suspicion arose, Michael's charm would disarm her, making her feel guilty for even imagining he could betray the life they had promised each other. He was patient, careful, and unrelenting in maintaining the illusion of the perfect husband. And so, life continued, seemingly flawless, with Michael's secret world carefully hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the day it would emerge and turn everything Emily believed upside down. As the months passed, Emily began to notice more than just small inconsistencies in Michael's routine. His late nights at the office had become almost nightly, and he often returned home exhausted, claiming endless meetings and urgent deadlines. Yet the exhaustion seemed selective. There were times when he appeared energized, distracted, or unusually secretive, especially when answering messages on his phone. Emily started to feel the unease growing in her chest, an invisible weight she couldn't shake. Something about Michael's behavior was no longer just odd, it was deliberate, controlled, and carefully hidden. Emily had always trusted him completely. She had married him believing that he was the embodiment of honesty, kindness, and love. But now, a creeping doubt began to whisper at the edges of her mind. Michael's computer screen was often angled away from her view, and his phone never left his side. He developed a habit of leaving the room when taking calls, sometimes speaking in hushed tones, which only fueled Emily's growing suspicion. She wanted to confront him, but she feared the possibility of discovering something that would shatter her world. In reality, Michael had been living a parallel life that no one could have imagined. He had met Samantha at his firm, a confident, striking woman who shared his drive and ambition. What began as casual professional conversations gradually evolved into secret encounters, carefully disguised as business trips and client meetings. Michael's affection for Samantha was intense, consuming, and all-encompassing, yet he maintained the facade of the devoted husband with unwavering precision. Every lie, every carefully crafted excuse, served to protect his secret life from Emily and the world outside. Samantha was more than just a fling. She had a magnetic hold on him that left Michael simultaneously exhilarated and trapped. He found himself making elaborate plans to see her, often reserving hotel rooms under false names or arranging late-night meetings in quiet, hidden corners of the city. Each rendezvous was filled with tension and excitement, but also a gnawing fear of discovery. Michael had underestimated the power of his own duplicity, not realizing that maintaining two separate lives would demand an impossible level of deception. As Emily grew increasingly uneasy, small signs of Michael's double life began to surface. She discovered unfamiliar receipts tucked into the glove compartment of his car, indicating places she had never heard of. Subtle messages popped up on his laptop, quickly deleted, but leaving faint traces that suggested a life hidden from her view. Yet Michael's charm was relentless. Each time Emily confronted a fleeting suspicion, he offered explanations so convincing that she doubted her own judgment. The tension between trust and doubt began to shape every interaction, leaving Emily emotionally exhausted and increasingly isolated in her confusion. Michael's dual existence had reached a dangerous tipping point. While Emily clung to the belief that the man she loved was real, Michael's secret life was growing bolder, more complicated, and more uncontrollable. He was a man walking a razor's edge, balancing his promises of forever with actions that contradicted every vow he had ever made. And beneath the surface of his carefully constructed life, the cracks were widening, cracks that once exposed would unravel everything Emily had once believed was perfect. Emily's unease had grown into a quiet obsession. She couldn't ignore the subtle clues that suggested Michael was hiding something. At first, she tried to rationalize the oddity's work stress, tight deadlines, nothing more. But the evidence slowly piled up. Unfamiliar charges on their joint credit card, strange messages that vanished too quickly to read, and little lies that didn't fit together. Each discovery chipped away at the trust she had once taken for granted. She felt as if the man she married had become a stranger hiding behind a familiar face. Michael, meanwhile, was careful, calculating every move to maintain his facade. He had become a master of compartmentalization, dividing his life into neat separate sections. To Emily, he was the attentive husband, the reliable partner, and the man who spoke of forever. But to Samantha he was different. Bold, daring, and consumed by desire. Their secret encounters had grown more frequent and riskier, each meeting a careful negotiation between passion and the fear of being discovered. Michael's ability to juggle these two lives was extraordinary, yet it required constant vigilance. One slip, one careless word, and everything could collapse. Emily's instincts eventually led her to pay closer attention. She noticed patterns she had missed before, the way Michael always left his phone face down, the times he avoided eye contact, the small inconsistencies in his stories. She began documenting these clues in her mind, trying to make sense of the growing puzzle. The more she observed, the more Michael's life seemed like a carefully choreographed performance, with Emily as the unaware audience. It became clear that something significant was being hidden from her, and the thought was both terrifying and maddening. The relationship with Samantha was more than a casual affair. It had an intensity that frightened even Michael. Samantha had a way of making him feel alive in ways that Emily, with her predictable routines, no longer could. Every text, every stolen glance, every secret meeting fed a thrill that he couldn't resist, even as it gnawed at his conscience. Michael's lies became more elaborate, his excuses more intricate, until the truth was no longer a simple concealment, but a web that threatened to ensnare him. The first real crack came when a friend noticed Michael's behavior. Small remarks about his absences and unexplained stress led to questions that Michael skillfully deflected. Yet the friend's curiosity planted seeds of doubt that began to spread beyond Emily's suspicions. Slowly, the hidden world Michael had built started to reach into the lives of those around him. Even his closest friends began to sense the tension beneath his polished exterior. Emily, now more vigilant than ever, felt trapped between love and fear. Every gesture from Michael could be genuine, or it could be another layer of deception. She longed to confront him, to demand the truth, but part of her feared the answer more than the uncertainty itself. Michael's secret life had become a force of its own, pushing the boundaries of his control and drawing everyone he loved into a dangerous game. In that tension, the line between trust and betrayal blurred, setting the stage for consequences that none of them could have imagined. Michael's carefully balanced double life was starting to unravel, and he could feel it. Each lie required more effort, every secret meeting demanded elaborate planning, and the pressure to maintain the illusion of normalcy weighed heavily on him. Samantha's demands had grown insistent, her possessiveness escalating with every encounter. She expected Michael to prioritize her, yet he still had a life with Emily to protect. The tension between the two worlds became a constant, gnawing anxiety that he could no longer escape. At home, Emily's intuition was sharpening. She noticed subtle signs she had once dismissed. The lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on his jacket, messages that disappeared too quickly for her to read, and strange receipts tucked into drawers or folded in his briefcase. Each discovery fueled a growing unease that refused to be silenced. She wanted to believe Michael was still the man she married, but the evidence pointed to a darker truth. The realization that her husband might be leading a double life was terrifying, yet she felt powerless to confront him without proof. Meanwhile, Michael's obsession with Samantha had begun to cloud his judgment. Where once he had been careful and methodical, he now risked exposure in increasingly reckless ways. Meetings were arranged in public places, yet every encounter carried the danger of being seen. He invented urgent work emergencies to justify his absences, while Samantha pushed him to take bolder risks. The thrill of the secret, which had once felt manageable, was becoming dangerous. Michael began to feel trapped in a game with no clear way out, his lies multiplying faster than he could control. The first significant exposure came from an unexpected source, a close friend who noticed inconsistencies in Michael's stories. A casual remark about a business trip led to questions he couldn't fully answer. Though the friend did not confront him directly, the suspicion planted a seed that threatened to grow. Michael realized that his private world was no longer contained. It was reaching into the lives of those around him, threatening to expose him in ways he had never imagined. Panic began to creep into his calculated demeanor. Emily, sensing the danger, began to act cautiously. She started paying closer attention, documenting evidence, and observing Michael's habits more closely. Every small slip, an unexplained phone call, a lingering look, an unusually defensive response, added weight to the suspicion that had been growing for months. She felt the invisible walls of deception closing in, knowing that the life she had trusted was built on lies. Meanwhile, Michael's duplicity continued unchecked in moments. Yet the pressure was building like a storm about to break. Samantha's obsession, combined with Emily's growing vigilance and the friend's quiet suspicions, created a perfect storm of potential exposure. Michael, who had once believed himself untouchable, now faced a reality he could no longer control. Each decision carried greater risk, each lie a heavier burden, and the consequences of discovery loomed closer with every passing day. The tension between his two worlds was no longer sustainable, and it was only a matter of time before the precarious balance would shatter completely. Emily had reached a point where doubt was no longer enough. She needed answers. The small inconsistencies she had noticed over months had grown into undeniable evidence that something was seriously wrong. She couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in her chest, the sense that the life she had trusted was slipping through her fingers. Quietly, without telling Michael, she hired a private investigator to look into his activities, desperate to uncover the truth without tipping him off. The investigator's findings were more shocking than Emily could have imagined. Michael's careful facade of the devoted husband crumbled under scrutiny. He had been fabricating stories about business trips and emergencies for months, often going to great lengths to convince Emily that he was occupied with work. Hotel stays, restaurant bills, and messages that vanished too quickly to read. All of them painted a picture of a man living a secret life parallel to his marriage. But the most alarming revelation was that Michael's affair with Samantha was far more intense than Emily had suspected. It wasn't just a fling. It was an all-consuming obsession that had begun to dominate his thoughts and actions. What shocked Emily even more was the extent of Michael's manipulation. He had been carefully controlling both women, spinning a web of lies to keep Samantha invested while maintaining Emily's trust. Samantha, the investigator discovered, had been planning to take their relationship to an extreme, talks of moving in together, cutting ties with anyone who might interfere, and even hints of leaving Emily entirely behind. Michael, who had once believed he could control the situation, had underestimated Samantha's intensity and the danger it posed. Emily felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and fear. The man she had promised forever with was not just lying, he was orchestrating a dangerous game, one that threatened to destroy everything she held dear. Her feelings for Michael, once filled with love and trust, were now replaced with caution and a need for protection. Every affectionate gesture he had shown, every promise he had made, now felt like a carefully calculated move designed to keep her unaware. Meanwhile, Michael remained oblivious to the investigator's work. Convinced that his secrets were safe, he continued his double life, unaware that the walls of deception were closing in. The thrill he once felt in his secret encounters with Samantha was now overshadowed by a growing anxiety, a subconscious awareness that his life was becoming increasingly unsustainable. Emily, armed with the investigator's evidence, began to plan her next steps. She knew that confrontation would be inevitable, but she also understood the importance of timing and strategy. The reality of Michael's betrayal hit her fully. He was not the man she thought she knew, and Samantha was far more dangerous than she had imagined. The secrets he had buried for so long were finally surfacing, and the consequences were about to ripple through everyone's lives in ways that no one could have predicted. The perfect husband, the man she had loved and trusted, had been living a dangerous lie, and now the truth could no longer be hidden. The confrontation between truth and deception came faster than Michael expected. Emily, armed with the evidence collected by the investigator, no longer needed to wonder. The man she had loved, the one she had trusted with her entire life, had been living a secret existence for months, and the scale of his betrayal was devastating. When she confronted him, it wasn't with anger alone, it was with the quiet strength of someone who had seen the full picture and refused to be fooled any longer. Michael, for the first time, could no longer hide behind charm or excuses. Samantha's presence added an unexpected layer of chaos. She vanished shortly after the evidence surfaced, leaving behind cryptic messages that hinted at anger and betrayal. She had been an unpredictable force, a reminder that Michael's double life had consequences beyond his control. The thrill he had once sought had become a threat to everything he had worked to protect. Emily's resolve strengthened as she realized that his secret world was no longer Michael's alone. It was spilling over, threatening the stability of her life and the lives of those around him. The fallout was immediate. Friends and family who had once admired Michael began to question everything they had believed. Social circles that had envied his seemingly perfect marriage were now witnesses to a story of deception, manipulation, and betrayal. Michael's reputation, carefully built over years of charm and success, began to crumble. Colleagues whispered about his behavior, and his credibility in the professional world faltered. The life that had once seemed enviable now stood exposed as a house of cards, built on lies and carefully hidden truths. Emily, despite her heartbreak, began to reclaim her own strength. She took control of the situation, ensuring that her life and future would no longer be dictated by Michael's manipulations. Legal measures were taken, documents filed, and boundaries firmly established. The process was painful, but it brought a clarity she hadn't felt in months. The man she had once believed was her partner was now fully revealed, and she was determined to move forward with the truth firmly in hand. Michael, left to face the consequences of his actions, struggled to comprehend the collapse of his carefully curated life. The man who had once promised forever, who had hidden his desires behind a perfect mask, was now isolated, exposed, and powerless. His career faltered, as rumors of his personal betrayals and secretive behavior spread. Friends turned away, family members expressed disappointment, and the carefully constructed image of the devoted husband was completely destroyed. What had begun as a personal betrayal had now grown into a broader scandal, a cautionary tale about the dangers of deception and the fragility of trust. Michael's world, once filled with admiration and envy, had become a stark reminder that no secret remains hidden forever. Emily, though scarred by the experience, emerged with a clearer understanding of her own resilience, while Michael faced the consequences of choices that had spiraled far beyond his control. The fallout was complete, leaving nothing untouched by the ripple of lies that had once promised forever. Months after the confrontation, the final layers of Michael's deception came to light, revealing a truth far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Investigators, initially focused on his personal betrayals, discovered evidence of financial misconduct tied to his professional life. Michael had used his charm and trustworthiness as a cover to manipulate accounts, siphon money, and orchestrate schemes that left colleagues and clients vulnerable. The man who had promised forever to Emily had been living a life of greed and manipulation, extending his lies beyond the personal and into the professional, creating a double life that was more dangerous than anyone had suspected. Emily, now fully aware of the scope of Michael's deception, experienced a complex mix of relief, fear, and vindication. The man she had once loved was no longer capable of fooling her or anyone else. His promises, gestures, and affection had been tools for personal gain, carefully designed to maintain his image while pursuing selfish desires. Emily finally understood that the danger Michael represented extended beyond heartbreak. It was a web of lies and schemes that could have destroyed more than her marriage if left unchecked. Michael's exposure was swift and absolute. Legal authorities moved quickly, uncovering evidence that linked him to fraudulent transactions and professional misconduct. Friends who had once envied his life now watched in disbelief, as the man they thought they knew became a cautionary tale of deceit. Samantha, whose obsession had fueled part of his double life, remained a shadow in the story, disappearing without a trace after Michael's downfall, leaving questions about her motives unanswered. Michael, once the master of manipulation, found himself powerless and cornered, unable to control the consequences of the life he had built on lies. The ripple effects extended beyond legal consequences. Michael's reputation, once impeccable, was shattered. Colleagues who had relied on his professionalism distanced themselves. Family members who had trusted him expressed disappointment and anger, and the social circles that had once admired him now whispered about the deception and betrayal. Every carefully constructed image of perfection crumbled under scrutiny, leaving only the stark reality of a man who had prioritized desire and greed over honesty and loyalty. For Emily, the final revelation brought closure, though not without scars. She began rebuilding her life with the knowledge that she had survived a calculated and dangerous deception. The heartbreak remained, but it was tempered by strength and clarity. She understood that love could be manipulated, and that appearances were often deceiving, but she also recognized her own resilience in facing the truth. Michael's story, once one of charm and admiration, ended as a cautionary tale. His promises of forever, his hidden passions, and his calculated lies became a reminder that even those who appear perfect may harbor the darkest secrets. The life he had built, the relationships he had manipulated, and the trust he had shattered were now permanent marks of his deception. In the end, the man who had lived in shadows was exposed to the full light of reality, leaving behind a story that would be remembered as a chilling reminder of the consequences of betrayal, obsession, and unchecked ambition.